Hey everybody, Andre here, and today I want to do a quick lesson on augmented sixth chords. So, what an augmented sixth chord is basically a predominant chord. So what predominant means is it's a chord that functions to set up the dominant. Okay? So predominant chord sets up the five. So, in a nutshell, it's called an augmented sixth chord because in the chord there is an interval of an augmented sixth, which happens to sound the same as a minor seventh. Okay? But it's spelled as an augmented sixth. So let's just take C major for a moment. In the key of C, the 5 chord is G major. Okay? There's your 5. So the setup to the dominant, how we can prepare the dominant, the most obvious way is with the leading tone to G. So the leading tone to G is F sharp. Okay? What is the other leading tone to G? You're probably thinking, wait a minute. Leading tone, there's only one, it goes up. Well, you can think of another leading tone going down a half step. You know, at the end of the day, a leading tone is just half step motion. So F sharp up to G is a half step, and A flat down to G is another half step. So what you're left with here is this kind of funny interval. It's a third, but it's not a major third. It's not a minor third. It's a diminished third. It's a diminished third. And what happens if you invert this, you get an augmented sixth. So this interval here is an augmented sixth, which is the fundamental part of this chord, the augmented sixth chord. Okay, well, that's just 2 notes. That's not really a chord. That's just a dyad. That's just an interval. Well, there are other parts of this chord. We have an A flat and an F sharp. We need one more note to make our first kind of augmented sixth chord. Our first kind of augmented sixth chord is called the Italian augmented. And we'll talk about these names in just a second. But what makes an Italian augmented sixth chord is you have the A flat, the F sharp, and the C. So let's talk scale degrees. In the key of C major, A is the 6th scale degree, but it's being flatted. So you have the flat 6th scale degree. F is the 4th scale degree, but it's being raised, so it's the sharp 4. And C is the tonic, it's the 1. So for an Italian augmented sixth chord, you need 3 scale degrees. You need flat 6, you need sharp 4, and you need 1. Very easy to memorize. All you have to do is memorize the scale degrees, and you got it. Okay? So what this ends up sounding like is here's C major, here's G, and here's back to C. So 1, 5, 1. This Italian augmented sixth chord going to G sounds like this. You hear that leading tone going outwards like that? That's the idea behind an augmented sixth chord. Okay, you have that outwards resolution. So in Roman numeral land, what I like to do is think of it in terms of the figured bass. And the figured bass, it tells you inversions and stuff. So 5, 5, 5, 3, that's root position. But this one, look at what it kind of looks like. If you take the F sharp, put it down here, now you have what looks like a root position chord. So essentially, this chord is in first inversion. So I like to write Italian augmented sixth because it tells you it's in first inversion. Now, it doesn't mean that it's an augmented sixth chord. That's what the IT tells you, that it's in Italian. What else is going to be that? These names, the Italian and then the other 2 that we'll talk about in a sec, it's just arbitrary, easy to use words, right? I asked some colleagues who studied theory in other countries, for example in Portugal, they use the names Italian Augmented 6th and French Augmented 6th and German Augmented 6th, except they say those countries in Portuguese. Same thing in Russia, same thing in France. Curiously, in Germany, they don't use these names. Instead, they use just the inversion. So, for example, they would use the word augmented and then say 6, 3, telling you that there's a sixth above the bass, and then there's a third above the bass, implying that it's an Italian, which is kind of cool. So very practical over there in Germany. But otherwise, the country chords. That's what people like to say. The country chords, to remind themselves of augmented 6th chords. Okay, but that's just one of them. So we got the Italian. Now, the next one is called the French augmented 6th. So FR for French, augmented, French augmented. And it's essentially the same thing, but there's one extra note. So you keep the sharp 4, keep the flat 6, and keep the 1, and you add the second scale degree. And what it ends up being is it kind of sounds like this. A little bit of extra dissonance, and then the resolution. Versus, here's the Italian. Here's the French. Hear that extra little dissonance in there. Kind of an interesting sound. And just like before with the figured bass stuff, I mean, if you kind of just look at this chord, it looks like it's in second inversion. So I say 4-3. It's a second inversion 7th chord. The root being D, F sharp. Or D is the root. D, F sharp, A flat, and C. So that's kind of cool, I think. All right, so we have the Italian augmented 6th. We have the French. And we have the German augmented 6th. Now the German augmented 6th has, instead of the second scale degree, it has the flat 3rd scale degree. And if you look at this chord, it kind of looks like it's in first inversion. So this one I would write as a German augmented 6-5, because it's like a first inversion 7th chord. And this one sounds like this. And you should probably tell that that kind of sounds like a dominant 7th chord. And it is. So that one's very strong, and that one has a bunch of very interesting use cases that I hope to talk about in another video. In classical harmony, the German very often goes to the 5 chord by way of a 1-6-4 to avoid these parallel fifths. See that A flat and the E flat, and then the G and the D, those are parallel fifths. So in classical music, you know, think Bach, think Mozart and stuff like that. Very often you'll have a 1-6-4 in between, but that's not important for our purposes. So what did we just find out? First of all, augmented 6th chords are predominant. Okay, that's great. You have 3 different types. You have the Italian, French, and the German. All 3 have the flat 6th scale degree, the sharp 4th scale degree, and the tonic, the 1st scale degree. The French adds the 2nd scale degree, and the German, instead of the 2nd scale degree, you have the flat 3rd. So, yeah, very good. It's really easy. It's really easy. All you have to do is memorize those scale degrees. Now, last thing for this quick video is that in minor, you have to remember that the 6th is already flatted and the 3rd is already flatted. So let me give you an example. Let's say we're in the key of C minor. All right, we have a B flat, E flat, and A flat. And you have, let's say we're going to go to a G chord again. G, B natural, D, and F. Let's say we want to use the German augmented. So we're thinking, okay, the 1st scale degree is 1. Great, let's have 1. And the sharp 4, all right, that's going to be F sharp. Okay, cool, that's great. And the flat 6. All right, so A flat is the 6th scale degree. Let me flat that again. A double flat. Whoops. A double flat and G are the same note. So you lose that half step thing. So you have to remember that in minor, it's already flatted, so you don't gotta do any more flatting, okay? So there you go. And the same thing goes for the E flat, right? It's not gonna be an E double flat because that would just be the same as D. It's just regular old E flat, like it's in the key signature, okay? So just remember, in minor, things are already flatted, so don't do it any further than that. But yeah, that's a quick video on what augmented 6th chords are. It's really not that complicated of a thing. Of course, recognizing them in context is a different story. But here is the fundamental aspect of what makes an augmented 6th chord. It's a predominant chord. It's either a 3-note one called an Italian, or a 4-note, the 7th chords, French and German, each with their separate scale degrees. And we've only covered them in their standard inversion, with the flat 6th scale degree being on the bottom. But that's of course not always going to be the case. I can find a huge amount of examples where they don't appear in their quote-unquote standard inversions. So this is just kind of like where it comes from, the desire of the doubled leading tone, one to go down and one to go up. That's really the core of what makes an augmented 6th chord. So if this was useful for you, please let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to have more content coming towards you, please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to grow as much as I can. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day.